Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest Lunch and Learn. This is actually season 3 and episode 3. My name's Ben Howard, and it's the first time I've fronted this. Why am I fronting this today? Well, it's because Sheb is going to be presenting alongside Carlos. So what have we got to talk about, and what announcements are we making? Let me just put a quick slide up here as well, and we should be able to do that. And let's have a quick look at some slides. So what announcements do we have today? Well, this is the intro for today's session. We've got competition coming up, and that's pretty exciting for us, we think, at least. So I'm going to kind of run us through a little bit in there. We've got the marvelous Carlos Castro, all the way. Well, I'll tell you where he is later, but he's going to deal with some Power BI report optimization. And what's great about this is real world stuff that he came across once he had to work from home. Part 2, then we've got our very own Sheb Raymond, who's going to talk about fantasy football and web scraping. So scraping that data and looking through there. And then, of course, we've got some more around the competition, next announcements, etc. So what are we looking at today, and what's new out in the world of Power BI? Well, it's just a ton of stuff, but obviously Microsoft Ignite happened, and Sheb mentioned the Ignite and the cloud competition, which was happening. He mentioned that a couple of weeks ago. Whether that's still online or not, I'm not sure. But I was looking on Ignite today for some content, and Microsoft have published, I'm not sure if they've published all, but they've certainly published a lot of the Ignite content. You can see I've just searched in here for Power BI, and we've returned 134 sessions. However, there's a little caveat with this. Of course, some of these sessions are repeated. So some sessions were repeated, I think, about 3 times in order just to deal with different time zone issues. So be aware that it's probably not 134 unique sessions on there. 134 would be the count, but the count distinct, of course, put it in Power BI terms, would be somewhat less than that. Also, I wanted to quickly mention our sponsors. So let's just ping over to here. Cloud2 are our headline sponsors for this season, and just in case you fancy a career in Power BI or MI, etc., data analytics, they've got a current position available for exactly that sort of role. So a senior data consultant Power BI at the top of the M602, I think. No, wrong one, but the other motorway, I think, that goes over towards Bradford. For those of you who know the Northwest better than I do, plainly. So, as a quick plug for those guys. Back on to kind of what we're going to do today. Let's just scroll to here and then to here. What else should I mention? I should mention, yeah, we've done some updates and some revamps to our website. So as you potentially know, we run powerbisupport.co.uk. If you're interested in any of the previous versions of the lunch and learns we do, and remember they're supposed to be half-hour snappy or an hour snappy with 2 half-hour sessions, then they're all there on our blog site. So you can go to powerbisupport.co.uk .blog. What else are we up to? Well, we do some workshops. So these are very much hands-on. They're full-day workshops. We've done intro to DAX, intro to Power BI. We've data modeling ones. I ran the last intro to Power BI one, and I'll be doing another one shortly. That was earlier this month, so that went very well. Lots of attendees, lots of excitement in there, and a lot of people getting a huge amount of value in there. So we'll continue to run these. I'm not sure how many we've got scheduled into the future. Actually, on the events are all in our diaries, but whether they've made it to the event website yet, I'm not sure. So keep an eye out for those if you're interested in learning some things. And effectively taking your skills to the next level in Power BI. Competition time, we'll kind of have some full details of this later on, but Sheb mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, so we've got some great prizes to give away for those of you who are interested in and utilizing some fantasy football data to show off your Power BI design skills, but also analytics skills. We'll look at that. Okay, so that's the announcements. That's really what we're going to cover off today. It's my pleasure to welcome our first speaker, Carlos Castro. Now, Carlos originally came from Venezuela. Let's try and find out why he made that journey. So let me just see if we can get Carlos on here and send Carlos live, and we've unmuted his mic. So Carlos, welcome to, well, I put on there Manchester. How is it with you in Manchester?
But yeah, to be honest, I prefer the rainy weather compared with the tropical one. So I'm happy to be here.
You're happy to be, that's good. I'm not sure.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, the grass is always greener, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what brought you from Venezuela to rainy stroke sunny or less hot Manchester?
No, but we can have a long chat about it. But yeah, different reasons that I decided to left the country and start a new life here with my wife. So yeah, everything has been a lot of fun.
Everything has a reason, right? And I took some stuff off your slideshow, which I know I've seen. So you're Power BI report developer, you're a data analyst. What are you going to talk about today, Carlos?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned before, I want to share with you some examples, some ideas, some learning, some tricks that I have been applying for different Power BI reports that, well, I developed on the company. And as you mentioned, working at home faced me to try to improve the performance of the report. But I want to explain on detail those issues. Brilliant. But yeah, it's not the same to be at the office running a Power BI report to be at home. There are connection issues and different aspects to consider about it.
Okay, cool. Right, well, Carlos, why don't you share your screen? I'm going to ask you a question on football later, but if you share your screen, I'll make sure that's out live to everybody, and then we'll be good to go.
Okay, not sure if you are watching my screen.
I can't see it shared yet.
Close your try.
Reading out a couple of comments while you do that. You know, it's very sunny Leeds, very sunny in Leeds. So thanks, Alistair, for that. Anonymous, it's sunny in the South London. I'm having bubble and squeak for lunch. Bubble and squeak, of course, good northern dish. I always think of, what is that, cabbage and potato. Yeah, fried cabbage and potato.
Yeah, I got a message. I'm trying to share the screen, but something is currently being shared in the live event. Anything you share will replace.
Do you want to try it now? I might stop sharing mine.
Okay, let me try again. Okay.
Right, I'm going to stop sharing mine.
Okay, I think now it's coming.
Yeah, we can now see your screen or your PowerPoint working from home. Remember to minimize me. Over to you for the next 20 minutes, Carlos. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Just turn it off here. Okay, well, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Once again, thanks, Ben, Shep, and Louis for this opportunity. I have been talking about it. My idea is to share with you some example learnings, maybe a couple of tricks that have been working on my Power BI reports over the last month, working at home. As Ben mentioned, I'm working on Network Plus as a data analyst. You can go to the website and check the details, but the company, as you can see, the main clients is in the utility and infrastructure service. So that's the core business of the company. I don't know how many of you are already working at home. Everybody knows what happened during March on the last month. In my case, after a couple of months on furlough, I was called back to work, start working at home. And when I start checking the reports, working on the tickets, creating the new reports, doing updates on the actual report, I start notice that the Power BI reports are slow. And then I started scratching my head, asking me, okay, what is going on? I don't have those issues a couple of months back at the office. Different questions, different approach. It could be the connection, the broadband. It could be the VPN, the connection to the server, the number of rows that I already have in the report, or specific issues with Power BI related to the data set. Could be the modeling of the data, could be the DAX query, or just the visualization, the canvas. So different elements that could be behind the performance of each one of the reports. So talking about Power BI optimization, as the image you can see in the image, is a balance. It could be anything that I mentioned before, or just could be just one little issue. And the key element with Power BI is the memory. When you're working on Power BI, or maybe you already know about it, Power BI is going to use memory. Sometimes it's going to consume a lot of memory, and that's going to be related to the data, the refresh of the data, the model, the query. When you check all the documentation, sometimes talking about Power BI optimization is just focusing on DAX. There is a lot of documentation about it. Marco and Alberto, you can read the book or check the YouTube channel. But optimize the performance of Power BI report is not just DAX. There are other elements, and you can check on this website, the Chris Webb, that he's explaining how to improvise the performance of that report, just focusing on the visualizations. We are going to see a couple of examples of that. If I try to summarize my experience or what I have to look after when I try to optimize a report, there are 3-4 areas that you can check. It could be the data, the model itself. It could be the canvas, the visualization, the image itself. It could be the query, everything related to DAX, or other elements. And you can check also this Microsoft documentation, this link. There is a guidelines, and you can see all the questions and reference that you're going to get there. Don't worry, this PowerPoint presentation is going to be available for everybody, so you can download and check the links later. So as I mentioned, it's easy to start with the other elements, nothing related to Power BI in theory. And as you can see here, it's just a snapshot from my laptop. When I start working on one of the reports that got issues, when I realized, and this is the task manager, just a snapshot, and you can see at that time, my laptop was using already 37% of the memory RAM is already used. And I was just listening to music on YouTube, and I got Teams, not chatting with not one in the office, no calls, nothing, just Teams open. And you can see how much memory is already consumed. Teams, I'm listening to music on YouTube on my laptop. As soon as I open it, one of the report of Power BI, you can see how much memory is consuming the report, just open it, plus Teams and listening to music in YouTube. So at this point, more or less half of the memory of my laptop is already used, and I'm not doing anything. So one thing you can keep in mind, and especially if you're working with third parties or your clients, external user, or your colleagues that are working at home probably right now, is they said, okay, why this Power BI report is slow? Run a test with the task manager and check what is going on, because probably that person is telling you the report is slow, but has different software open, different tabs, or maybe it's just listening to music or chatting with someone on Teams. So keep in mind that element that is going to affect your performance on Power BI. So let's jump to Power BI to see some examples. This is an example of one of the reports that I got at the office. It's mixing different elements, and as you can see, we have a slicer, we have some buttons. Those buttons are bookmarks that is going to give you to a different part of the report. you have charts, tables. And one of the issues that got that report is the performance. It's consuming too much time to render when the report is running. I'm wondering you are already aware of we got the performance analyzer. If you use the tool, the advice is go to a white page, a blank page. So in that way you are saving or deleting everything that is the cache memory, and that's going to give you a more exactly number of how long it's taking to render the report. Start recording. Let's go back to the website, to the tab, sorry. And when you see, you notice how long it's taking to render all the elements. And you can see here, there are too many elements on the canvas. And the first ones are just visual elements. It's nothing related to the tables, to the chart. And if we're counting, those are milliseconds. So 600, 600. So more or less in all those elements, probably we are spending 2, 3, 4 seconds just to show visual elements on the canvas. One thing that I did, and you can see on this tab, is blank, but all the visual elements, I just create an image on PowerPoint, nothing fancy, and I create a template, and you can see all the visual elements are part of the background. This background is not going to consume time and it's not going to render. I just click here and let's jump to this tab where I'm using the background. And as you can see, now I have less objects, less elements running on the canvas, and I'm saving already between 2 or 4 seconds on the end user experience. Another example, probably you notice, I got here 6 slicers, and this slicer is different to the other one. And as you can see here, we have 5, and that one is in here. It's a hierarchy slicer. One of the things that I learned, be aware of the custom visual, because the custom visual has a different performance to any visualization that is part of the software. In this case, this custom visual is a hierarchy slicer. I got a similar issue if you're using the chiclet slicer, but as you notice, from a Power BI perspective, this is not a slicer itself, it's a custom visual. And as you can see, all the slicers are using more or less 500 milliseconds, but this element is using almost 3 seconds. Right now, we have the advantage that the new slicer on Power BI is able to generate the hierarchy. So if I remove, just go back 1 second. Let's go to this tab and just replace every single slicer that was a custom visual on my report for the new slicer that is already in Power BI. And now this is the new one. And you can see it's using 479 milliseconds compared to the 3 seconds that was spending before using a custom visualization. In the same way, using with the slicers, as you can see, this slicer in particular is consuming almost 2 seconds. What is special in this and that slicer? That slicer is first is using a date time table column, sorry, and is showing the dates. One thing that have been there and learned on the visualization using the slicer, is this one. If slicer has to show all the split or every single element that contain the column, it's going to consume much memory compared if you are using just the normal element. So let me just prove a little bit. I know for the end user it's going to be nice, or it's going to have a better experience if you have a slicer and you already are watching what are your selections and what are your options. But as you can see here, this slicer is consuming 194. If I refresh again, 186 milliseconds. but if I change the option and I put in a drop down, so the user has to open the option. Let me refresh again. Now I'm using 95 milliseconds. If I refresh again, I'm using 88, more or less. So just with a little change, instead of using the list, use the drop down, you are saving 100 milliseconds in this example. So imagine that when you have a template where you have 3, 4, 5, or in my case, 6 slicers. If you multiply 100 several times, you are saving in just a couple of tricks 2, 3, 4, or even 6 milliseconds on the user experience. Another thing, and I think, okay, I go more or less. I'm on time. There is another element, and I mentioned before, is related to the data. I'm going to jump to DAX Studio to show you something important. If you remember, I mentioned in this slide that is using the date column. Everything that is related to the structure of the column or the type of column is going to affect the performance of the report. And the key element, and you can check here on Power BI, and then if you are using DAX Studio, you're going to check later on that, is on this data set. You can select here the option, it says on view, column distribution. And Power BI is going to tell you how many distinct values or how many unique values are related to each one of the columns. One thing, and you can read the documentation about it and understand the technical elements, but one thing that I learned over the months ago, and you can keep in mind, is every single column that is going to have too much unique values is going to cost you memory on the report. So think about everything that is related to the IDs, names, telephone numbers, address, postcode, national insurance numbers, time. Every column or every data that is going to have multiple distinct values is going to cost you memory, and it's going to affect the performance of the report. I already have here an old version of the report. I call it raw. We were watching the final version, and if I jump to DAX Studio, I already have a connection with the old version, and this is the final version that is already optimized. And you hit the button View Metrics. Just one second, okay. There is a lot of information that we're gonna receive here, but the key ones, and as I mentioned before, the key element on Power BI is memory. How much memory is gonna consume Power BI? Because the memory has came from somewhere. In this case, it's gonna came from your laptop. This report, the original draft, that amount of data that contained, it was consuming almost 40 megabytes of memory. When you came here on the tables, you're going to see the split. Almost in this case, 100% of that amount of memory is allocated to the main table. And when you open it, the split, DAX Studio is going to show you, give you sorter, and when it's going to flag what are the columns that are consuming the greatest amount of memory, from that 40%. So if you remember, this report is using 37 megabytes of memory, and more or less 16% of them is just this column, 60%, 60%. So when you do the math, more or less just 5-6 columns on my data set is using 60-70% of the data. The logic solution is remove those columns and you're going to save time. The next question will be, is possible to remove those columns? I'm using those columns. In my case, I don't have any issue to remove those columns. I don't need it. So when you came here, and this is the Power BI file that is already optimized. If you remember, the original one consumed 37 megabytes, and this one, just removing 6 columns, now is using more or less 9 megabytes of memory. If I jump 1 second to powerbi.com, you can see here, let's see if this time work properly. See how much time is taking to run the raw report. And remember, this report, I didn't change the background, I didn't change the visualizations, I didn't change the slides. Well, I got the different slicer, but it got the original, it doesn't have the background, and it's running 14 megabytes of memory. If I jump to the final version, in theory, well, my connection, as you can see, it takes less time to load the data and show everything. And this report is 6 columns less compared with the other one. It's less memory on the consumption of the performance. I'm using the background. Just a couple of tricks. In that way, I have been improved a little bit of the user of time. So I got more examples to show up some different ideas, but let me just go back to the PowerPoint presentation and try to summarize the main ideas. Thinking about the data, roughly mentioned about it, try to avoid the auto data time. And you can check the Guy in the Cube channel, where there are different videos for Adam and Patrick, and even Marco Alberto explain about it. Don't use auto data time. Use your own calendar table. I'm not showing this example because, well, I'm avoiding using that, but you can run a test and include and remove the auto data time. You see what is going on. Be aware of the distinctive values. As you can see, DAX Studio or the tool in Power Query is going to help you to identify which column has too much distinctive values. If not going to use it, remove it. That's the best advantage. Try to review the performance of the report. In my experience, on the data and the amount of data we manage on the company, on my experience, 3 months is a good time to review what is the performance on the data. Be aware of the new features that are going to improve the performance. On my example, that new slicer that is part of the Power BI options optimization helped me a lot. Test the custom visual performance before use it, and I just mention the chiclet, and I prove that the hierarchy slicer work but consume too much time. Use template background image, or try to redesign your reports in a better way. Try to use shadows, for example, from tables, or use the background as I already show you. Revisit your DAX query. One thing you learn when you read Marco Alberto is that is simple, but it's not easy. Every time you learn, you practice, you go back and revisit your DAX. That's going to help you. And they're more specific, or related to some examples, other examples that we can discuss later, related to the filter context or the DAX performance. And as I mentioned at the beginning, try to close Teams. Well, I know if you are working at home, you need to be on Teams, so keep on contact with your colleagues. But as you can see, run a test, check your task manager and see what is the performance. Probably Teams is consuming too much memory. Or in my case, I try to avoid listening to music on YouTube at the same time that I'm working. So yeah, I think I'm running out of time right now. So hope some of the examples, tricks that I mentioned help you, give you an idea. And yes, as I mentioned, you're going to get access to this PowerPoint presentation and check on details on of the link or website that I mentioned before. So, well, you can contact me on LinkedIn if you want. Yes, I don't know if there is some questions, any comments, or...
Let's have a look, Carlos. That was brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we've got a couple of questions, actually. Let's read them out quickly because it's probably quicker than typing. From Martin, regarding Power BI map visuals, is it faster to load render a map using latitude and longitude data points rather than postcodes? Oh, you might not know the answer to that. I have a view on that.
Yeah, well, no, it's a good question. On my experience, I am using the postcode, not using the latitude or longitude, but on my experience using the postcode, especially here in UK, is try to use the first part of the postcode, not the entire postcode, because the problem is when the map is gonna render, it's gonna point it. If you use the full postcode, the map is gonna render and trying to point it out the exact location. But if you use the first part, I don't know, M15, L1, SK, you know, the first part of the postcode, it's gonna give you just a view of the area and it's gonna consume less time. That's my experience. So, and yeah, and actually, yeah, we have to use a lot of postcode because we are working with the utility sector. So you need to know exactly what is the leak or when the gas has to go there, fix something on the street. So yeah, we use a lot of maps. On my experience, as I said, is use the first part of the postcode. I don't know the difference between the latitude, longitude, but use the first part of the postcode.
That's magic. I'm going to let you, given we're running on time, short on time, I'm going to let you answer the rest of the questions privately or publish them and then write the answer to that. Okay. So it's a good one on postcodes. Postcodes are always split into inner codes and outer codes and sectors as well. I've done a lot of work on postcodes. Quite interesting. I don't know. I'd have thought Latin long would have been really quicker, but Latin long, it's not always easy to get postcodes from Latin long and vice versa. Simply because postcode is it's not even a geographical area. It's a number of properties, around 20 households or postcode addressable items make up a individual postcode. So that's quite interesting. All righty, so Carlos, one last question. Actually, I'm going to share my desktop. Let's share that screen. I think, yeah, looking good. Hopefully, Carlos, what's your football team?
But to be honest, I'm not a huge football fan. But yeah, since I'm living here, I'm following the United.
Yeah.
So try to keep ahead with the team.
Get him off the call quickly. Get him off the call.
I was just about to say that will resonate nicely with some people who chose a safe option, of course, living in Manchester. Some of us have different views, don't we, Sheb? This is a great time to bring Sheb onto here. Carlos, thank you. I'll let you answer those questions. And
yeah, sure. Thank you.
Let's put Sheb. Sheb, I'm not sure I can get you. Oh, I can get your whole picture, I think, live. I should really learn how to use this one day, shouldn't I?
You should.
I should put that on there, put you on there, send you live. Sheb, I've got a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Your background. Where are you, mate?
My background, yes, I've had a revamp. I've been thrown out of my office, so now I'm in another room in the house, and this is the background for it. So yeah, Angelina Ballerina. Who doesn't like a mouse on the wall?
My kids are a little older than yours, and I remember Angelina Ballerina very well. You got your Juventus shirt on. I did have a slide. Yeah, I did have a slide to intro you, but basically you're going to talk to us about fantasy football and introduce kind of this competition, aren't you?
Yes, yeah. So we'll get started with what the session is about, essentially. So we are going to cover fantasy football and web scraping on today's session. So thanks everyone for joining, and thanks to Carlos for that session. That was really informative and a lot of tips and tricks that we can all sort of use going forward as well on our reports. Okay, so today we've got a competition coming up at the end of this session on web scraping and the fantasy football data. So there's so much data and so much analysis you can do with fantasy football data and this data set that we're about to sort of download. but there's so much work to do. There's so much thought that needs to go into it, and so many questions that you can ask and get answered through this data. And this is the reason I wanted to get this out to you guys, to get your insight into what you see as important questions for fantasy football, if you do sort of follow it, you know, how to get the most out of it. And up until this weekend, I was top of every league that I was in. I've just been put down to number 2 in the Manchester Power BI user. So if you've seen that, then I don't know, can't remember his name, who's at the top, but I'll be after him shortly. Okay, a few slides here just to get started with on web scraping. What is web scraping? It's not what that guy's doing and sort of scratching data out of the screen. It's a process of extracting data from a website using an application, a process, or some sort of tool, in which in this case we're going to be using Power BI. And essentially it simplifies the process of extraction by using automation. So, you know, the last thing we want to do is do things manually. We want it automated. And so basically it saves you that manual job of downloading data, you know, again and again and over again. And so you can just sit back and let it happen automatically. Okay, but why should we use web scraping, and what sort of reasons are there? So it's ability to extract data from otherwise unreachable sources. I mean, if you think five years ago, you know, 10 years ago, would you be able to sort of go onto a website and scrape the data off? You know, I don't think so. I remember the first time I saw web scraping and someone demoed to me the top 40. So how you can scrape the top 40 singles from a music website, and I was like, wow. You know, and we've come a long way from that, you know, since then. And some of these unreachable sources have now become sort of reachable. And then we can take that data and analyze it and use it in whatever sort of way we want to make our own sort of analysis from that as well. And again, you know, we use it because we want to save time. There's so many companies that you know, take out 5 to 6 days a month, you know, to sit and do their month-end figures, because they need to you know, manually download some data from a source system, then they need to change the numbers, transform, then they need to manually upload it somewhere, and that all takes time. And you know, if that was in a sort of an automated process, you would save a lot of time and a lot of money around that as well. Okay, so in what sort of user cases would you sort of use web scraping? So a couple of sort of examples that you might sort of know of is sort of hotel comparisons and websites where you get the lowest price guarantee, and the reason they can give that is because they're web scraping all the other sort of hotels and the background, making sure that their figures are better than the ones there, and that's why they can offer that guarantee. And supermarkets do it as well, where Tesco are sort of now price matching Aldi and making sure that they you know, on par with them as well, and essentially keeping an eye on sort of competition that's out there. Social media, again, you know, web scraping is used for social media marketing and advertising. So all the adverts that you get when you go on websites, people scrape that data, then use it to then sell you products and services, etc., which you'll see all the ads popping up on your websites. And well, you know, elections, you know, we've heard about it, but you know, working in data, knowing data, how it works and what you can actually do with it, you know, that probably happened, right? You know, they probably took all our data from the Facebook and, you know, put it in, transformed it in a way where it sort of came back to us, and they use that, you know, a web scraping format to do that as well. So a lot of stuff we can do with web scraping. But today we're going to do fantasy ball. We're sort of toning it down a little bit. We're not going to change any elections. We're going to try and change our outcome of our fantasy football leagues. So what we're going to do, we're going to connect to fantasy football data online. Okay, we're going to extract the files and data from there. We're going to try and automate the process. We're going to cleanse that data a little bit, depending on what sort of time we've got left. Review that data and then discuss some of the sort of data modeling options and how we can then take it to the next step as well. Okay, competition time, that will come afterwards. So I'm going to sort of minimize this and then go straight onto my Power BI so we can get started with this web scraping. Okay, so where are we going to scrape this data from? So we've got our fantasy football website. We're not actually going to hit this website. We're going to hit another website called Fantasy Overlord. Okay, so Fantasy Overlord, I've got a history button down here, and they've taken a copy of all the Premier League data from 2016, so you can see 2016 game week 5. They've got all the sort of files and all the data from each week, so a snapshot of each week of data all the way down to the current game week, where is season 20 and game week 4. Okay, now if I just hover over one of these, and you could probably, don't know if you can see, you can't see the link, so if I right click and copy the link address here, that is just a CSV file. So if I click on that, that will start downloading a CSV file here. Okay, but what we want to do, we want to connect straight into that without having to download it. Okay, so I'm going to right click and take a copy of this link address to begin with. Okay, I'm going to go into my Power BI. I'm going to go to get data and click on my web link. Okay, so web links, you can sort of create URLs here by using the advanced, but I'm just going to click straight into here, paste that file in there, and then see what Power BI does to it. And this process has changed recently as well with Power BI. They've changed the way this works as well. So you do have to specify what sort of data type you're connecting to now. Okay, so Fantasy Overlord, you can see it's connected to it here, and we're going to open it as a CSV file here. So we can click on that file. We can open it as an Excel file if need be, or text file, but we know it's a CSV file, so we're going to connect straight into that like that. And there we go, simple as that. So we've now got that file from that particular data set that we downloaded straight into sort of Power BI, and we can see all the data that we need for our fantasy football right there. Okay, so what would we want to do? So what if we wanted to download all these files here? So we've got a number of files, we've just connected to one. Okay, so what we don't want to do is then connect to each individual file again and again and again. You know, you can sort of imagine how many different connections we're going to have in our report. Okay, and we want to remove that manual intervention from all of this. So what we want to try and do is automate and get every single file all in one go. Okay, so now the way we do that is we need to create a function. Okay, so to create the function, what we need to do is first of all get the URL and have a look at how that's created. Okay, now I'm going to go into my advanced editor here, and I'm using the magnifier here, so just let me know if you can see that. Okay, so fantasyoverlord.com Premier League, and then you can see the FPL. You can see the file equals FPL 20, so League 20, and then the game week is at 0 there. Okay, so that's the name of the file, and what we're going to try and do is put a I knew I shouldn't have done this magnifying thing.
Hey, Chev, I feel your pain. Zoom it, mate. Zoom it.
Yeah, zoom it. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to zoom it. Okay. So let's have a look here. So what we want to do, first thing we're going to do is get rid of our steps. Okay, because all we want is the actual source. So we're going to get rid of 2 of our steps here. So we're left here with the source details here. Okay, and if we double click in that, then that will show us our fancy sort of connection there. Okay, if we go into our advanced editor, okay, what I want to do is parameterize this area here. So the Premier League 20, if I go back to my list, and if I look at each of these, you can see that they've got the number in there and then the game week. So it's a sort of number from 0 all the way to 36. And essentially what we want to do is pick out each of these numbers here and then put it into this URL as a parameter. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete this 20. Okay, and I'm going to say, okay, I want to put in the year in there. Okay, and the game week, I'm going to put the game week number in there as well. So game week and game week like that. And put an ampersand, and then it needs a double quote just to close that bracket there. Okay, so what I've done there is just split up that URL to then say, okay, I want to put a year in here. So I want to put the year number myself, and I want to get the game week number. I want to put the game week number in myself as well. Okay, as always with coding, we need to sort of put our parameters up here as well. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is put our year as text, okay, and then we're going to put our game week as well. and then we're going to create that as a table, and like that. Okay, so game week as text, year as text, game week as text, and then as a table like that. Okay, and as you can see, it is case sensitive, so if you do come to doing this, then just remember that as well. Now the other thing that I want to edit as well is this number of columns here. I don't want it to restrict the number of columns that it pulls in, so I'm going to delete that part of it there, but leave the rest of it. The rest of it's okay, but I'm going to delete that rest of it there. Okay, so I've put in that parameters in there for it to accept it, and I'm going to click OK. Then it's going to turn into this sort of visual here, so this sort of pane. So now it's asking me to put in these parameters here. So let's say, for example, if we go back to our website, we can see we've got FPL 18, game week 19. So if I put year 18, game week 19, and I click on invoke, then that will go and get me that file and then show me the data within that individual file, right? So now you can sort of see we've moved to the next step now. We've now introduced a parameter to then go in and get that data from there, okay? But we're going to go even a step further now. What we're going to do is get the list of all of these by joining onto this link here. So I'm going to take a copy of that fancy overlord history, okay? And I'm going to connect into that now, right? And I'm going to go and get the parameters and data directly from that source. So I'm always getting the up-to-date data for that, okay? So again, I'm going to click into the web. I'm going to paste that history in there. Now, sometimes, you know, you don't always get the web view, or you don't get the right view of the data when it comes to sort of joining onto web data. You know, you don't get the tables or any displays showing up. So you have to use the examples option that you get for the web view. And if you give this a second, you'll see that it doesn't actually find any tables on that particular web page. But we're going to use the add tables using examples, which you might have seen before as well. Okay, so you can see we've joined onto the page, and what we're going to type in here is I'm just going to type in the FPL 16-game week 5. So FPL 16-game week 5. Okay, then I'm going to hit return. First of all, it doesn't get anything to begin with. So let's type in another one, FPL 16 game week 6, was it? Next one, yep. Game week FPL, if I spelled that right, FPL. That's game week 5. And then you can see once you put a couple in there in the right format and get them spelling right, of course, it's now picked up all the other FPLs and all the other values in there. So it's now picking up all the different files and the codes that are available on that page, all the way down to game week 4 of this current season there. Okay, so I'm just going to grab that, and that's all I need for my parameters, right? And I'm going to import that as a table there straight into my Power BI model. Okay, so table here. Okay, so first thing, I need to clean this up and I need to get the actual numbers out of here. Okay, so quite a few things we can do. There's a number of ways we can do it. So let's just go. Easiest way, let's first of all split the columns up. Okay, and then from here, I need this number 16 out of here. So I need to remove the FPL. So I'm going to replace values. I'm going to say, okay, find me FPL and replace it with nothing. And then that removes that FPL from there, and I've just got the number now. And then from here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to right click and I'm going to replace. And I'm going to take the game week and I'm going to replace the game week with nothing. So then I should be just left with the numbers. Okay, so now I've got my parameter values now. Okay, so I'm going to rename this to year. Okay, and I'm going to rename this to game week. Okay. Now the other thing I'm going to do, this is because I've already looked at the data. What I'm going to do, I'm going to order this by ascending, okay? And I'll tell you why shortly once we sort of log in and have a look at that data, okay? So now I've got a value with all my game weeks, okay? So that's my parameter there. This is my get data function, Okay, so get data function. Okay, this invoked function was from previous, so we don't need that. I'll just delete that for the time being. Okay, so now I've got my year and I've got my game week. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is I now need to pass that into the URL. Okay, so from here, what we can do is add a new column. And what we do, we click on the option that says invoke custom function. Okay, if we click on that, we'll just leave it as custom for now. The function query, you can see it's got get data function. So that's the data function that we created in our previous step there. Okay, and again, it's picked up the parameters. So it's asking you, okay, well, what do you want to put in as the year? And we're going to say, okay, well, I want to select the year and the game week. I'm going to select my column, and then I'm going to select my game week there. Okay, so the parameters that we created in that URL, we're now passing in from the new data set that we've got just in the screen behind us there. Okay, now if we click OK, that creates us a new column, okay, with a table in there. Now, if I click on the side of any of these tables, it now puts that value of the year and the game week into that table and then shows me the table down here. If I click on a different value, it then goes and shows me the data from there as well. Okay, and I've got all the way down to the current season 2002, and then I've got that data there for me as well. Okay, so now I've automatically grabbed all that information from that website. I've cleaned it up a little bit. I've sort of put it in the format that I need, and I put it into a function for me to just go and grab. Okay, so now the only thing I need to do now is click on this button here, okay, which then says, okay, I'm going to get everything for you and I'm going to put it all into one single data set. Okay, now the one thing to do here at this point is just to click this load more, because sometimes if there's additional columns that it doesn't load in, it might just leave it out. Okay, so I'm going to uncheck this option where it says use original columns as prefixes, and then I'm going to click OK. And then as quick as that, it's already got all the data from all those files on this page, and we've now scraped every single file from this particular website and downloaded it into our Power BI data model. And the great thing is this is ready to refresh and ready to update as more and more are added in, because we've got the game weeks from examples, and that's going to keep updating each time that refreshes as well. Okay, so as you can see, we've got our data here. Now there's a few things we're going to do to this data just to clean it up a little bit. Okay, so first thing, you can see that it's got headers here, so let's deal with the headers, and let's put the first row as headers there. Okay, we can rename these here, so these we can rename to year. Okay, and this one we're going to rename to game week, because then we can have a look at the game week. Then we've got first name, we've got surname, we've got position, we've got the team, and then we've got the cost of the player, we've got the number of points that they got in that round, the total number of points that they've got, the average points, goals conceded, but there's some errors here as well. Let's have a look. So remove errors. So let's have a look at these errors and see what these are. Okay, so cost seems to be errors. Let's have a look. So let's keep these errors. So right click on here. Where's my keep errors? Where's my keep errors option? Number filters, no. Remove errors. I don't want to remove errors, I want to keep errors.
It should be Chev under the keep rows tab.
Keep rows.
And then isn't keep errors as part of there?
There we go. Near somewhere. Okay, so I'm going to keep my errors just to have a look and see exactly what's going on. Okay, so if I click on this error, so it's saying that couldn't convert to a number details cost. Okay, so there must be something in there. All right, okay, so I see what's happened. So because we've imported all these separate files, okay, and we've imported them all as separate files, there's still the headers in each of those separate files in there. So what we need to do is just filter those out. Okay, so if I do this again, just to show you, keep errors. Okay, but I'm going to step up a couple of steps here. Okay, rename that header. Okay, I'm going to filter this out. I'm going to say, okay, well, let's filter out first name. So first name, if I type in first name, you can see that it's got first name in the columns. I can uncheck that. Okay, and that will remove all the rows that have first name and have the surname and have the position list and all those column headers that are further down in the data that we can't see. It's just going to remove all those. So hopefully if I go to the next step where it says keep errors, it's now blank because we've got no errors there. So that's good. I can remove that and then have a look, continue having to look at some of this data. So we've got yellow cards, goals conceded, points saved, and all the way to the end. And if we go towards the end, we've got game week forecast. So you can see it's got forecast values here. So it starts at game week 1 and game week 2. So it gives you sort of a forecast going forward as well. And this adds to the sort of analysis that we can sort of make from some of this data as well to then forecast actually, well, who's going to forecast it to get more points in the coming weeks based on what they've or how they've performed in the first few weeks as well. And this is some of the data and some of the transformations and the data modeling might come into play here as well. And what the reason I sort of ordered it, so if you remember before where I ordered it by 0, the game week, as you move along into the sort of further game weeks, if we look at the first value that was in the on the website here, so the first one started at game week 5. Okay, so what that did was it removed the first 4 forecasts for the game weeks, and so when you imported everything else, it never showed the first 4 game weeks because originally it didn't have those columns there. But because we've started at the 0, it's got all the available columns, and then if there's no column available in any subsequent files, it's then just putting a blank value in the place of that. Okay, so we've got the game week forecast all the way from 1 all the way to sort of 38 as well. We've got an index in there as well, and what I would do is add my own index in. So let's add another column in, and I'm going to add an index column from 1. Okay, and I'm just going to put that to the beginning of the report. So I've got an individual identifier for each sort of row of data as well. Okay, and essentially that's it. What we want to do then, we can then go on and we can pull out names. Actually, let's create a new column here. Let's create a custom column called full name because we've got first name and surname, and we've got some blanks there. So let's
hey, Shep, as you go on, so you don't go on too long.
Yeah,
you've only got a couple of minutes, my friend.
Oh,
you know that.
My days. Okay, right. Okay, right. Let's skip this first name.
And I've got 50 slides to go through in those 2 minutes.
50 slides to go through as well. Right. So we might go over slightly a little bit today, but I do want to finish this. And what I'm going to do here is just close and apply, and that's it basically. So I've got the data, I've imported it, I've generated it, I've created a unique URL to then go and get all the individual game weeks, and I've put it all into a file ready for you guys to download. Now Lewis is going to post the link to where you can download this file. It's readily available now, and there's 2 versions of it. One is connected directly to the URL that we've done here, so it's connected live to the website. And I've got another version that's connected to an Excel source, which is a lot quicker if you want to do some data modeling and do some other bits and pieces around that. So that's available for you right now at the link in the chat there. And if you do miss any of this, of course, we'll send out some communications and get you all up to date on how we, what you want to do and how to do it, etc., etc. Okay, and this is where the competition starts. So we're going to give you a blank canvas now, and now it's over to you to now go and create your own Power BI fantasy football report. Okay, do we have any questions around that or anything else, Ben?
I don't. Let me just share my screen. We should be able to see this. Yep. Do we have any questions? Let me have a quick look. I think just a couple of comments saying, wow, I didn't know you could do that with web scraping. Really great and excellent explanation. So cool. Thanks to Sheb on that. Sheb, just stay on there. I'm going to leave actually, I'm going to get rid of your video for now. We'll stick me, bye-bye, Sheb. We'll stick me back on there. Do you know? Teams live. No, let's do that.
Yeah, just to let you know, we will be sharing all the files with you. They'll be available on our blog, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, All right, brilliant. Thanks, Sheb, for that. We will just get on to the competition. Before we get there, thanks to you, Sheb. Your team is, which team is yours at the moment? Who are you supporting?
Juventus Football Club.
Juventus, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's okay. Thanks for that. Mine still remains, of course, a good Northwest team. Warrington Town is a team I go and watch more than anybody else. And we got knocked out of the FA Cup the other week on pens. A bit disappointing. Anyway, to whet your appetite, in 2 weeks' time, we've got a session from AD Christia, and he's called it Counting Your Chickens. But I don't know why he's called it that. The exciting thing about that is a bit I put in brackets is it's about data input. So it's about data verification and then how you can change the data from the Power BI interface. So typically we think about Power BI being a reporting tool, which of course it is, but sometimes you might just want to use it for verification, and we might just want to go and verify the data and then correct incorrect data. So that's what AD is going to talk about. And then I think I will be talking about something else to be decided. So that's 2 weeks time, 21st of October. Put it in your diary, reply to the meetup requests which go out. Sheb has talked about competition time, and my job is to tell you how to take part, etc. And Lewis, who's also on the line, and Sheb, of course, will join in time to time. So how do we take part? Well, ultimately, the competition is about creating your own Power BI fantasy football report from the scraped data set that Sheb's just showed you how to scrape. You can go and scrape it yourselves, of course, if you want. Remember, everything's on the blog site. When do you want to start? Well, start now. So from now until 3 weeks time, 28th of October at midnight is when we will close the competition off. We got some great prizes, as can be seen there. So first prize from Cloud2 is a set of true wireless earphones. Second prize from Alex. So Alex hasn't been able to be with us today, but is an AC Milan replica shirt, size medium, I do believe. And third prize is a Huawei Honor Band 5, so that Huawei can track your every movement. No, I only said that. I obviously don't believe that's true. We'll announce the winner in 2 episodes time on the 5th. Episode 5 on the 4th of November. So we'll announce our winner then. So that's great. We've been through the slides and prizes, or the prizes. So that's good. So how do we take part? In fact, there's some competition FAQs, but before we do that, let's just go and have a look at how do you get there. Well, you go to this website here, powerbisupport.co.uk/competition. It's dead easy. Let's just scroll through here. Sheb mentioned some competition files which you can get from this link. So that is the fantasy football data download.xls. Quite whether it's an XLS or a CSV, I'm not sure, Sheb. We've also got that data already loaded into PBIX, and a link to go and scrape your own data, live data. Okay, it'll refresh from the web. So there we've got the entry details. We do have some competition rules. Please abide by them, or read them, or don't. But basically they say, the judge's decision is final. What do we want from you? Your name, your email, contact number. You can either publish your Power BI report to the public website. So remember, you can embed your code to a public website. If you can't do that, you prefer, because of company restrictions, we know not everybody can do that, then upload your file instead. What we do ask, of course, is that we can kind of publicize and show these. We will create our own kind of gallery on our website, and we will display the best ones. Remember, you can always get through to the blog and review anything that Sheb showed you. To go back to the competition, kind of frequently asked questions, we know how to enter. Can you enter more than once? Well, not individually, but if you've got a few different things, any good Power BI report should have multiple pages. Can I enter with my friends? Whoa, shouldn't have clicked on there. A joint entry? Yes, of course you can, because one of you might be really good at visualizations and one might be really good at something else. But you only get one prize, right? We only have one set of earphones. We only have one AC Milan shirt. So up to you to decide who's going to get the prize if you win. Who are the judges? Well, you know, our very own Alex, our very own Sheb, our very own Lewis, and me as well. So that's great. And what are the judging criteria? What are we going to look for? Well, a little bit of everything. Obviously, it's a report. It's got to be visually appealing, but anybody can really display the data. The point about fantasy football is it's a competition, right? Which manager can gain the most points? So I want to, if I'm going to open up a fantasy football report, I'm going to ask, you know, who based upon, you know, maybe this time last year, because we've got historical data in there, you know, which striker had the most assists, or how many assists did the left back Andy Robertson, you know, make in the Premier League, and, you know, do we think he's going to do the same? So those sorts of things are going to be in the judging criteria. So it's going to be judged on many things. Sheb, Lewis, do you want to add anything onto that?
Yeah, just a couple of things. The website that I was on, Fantasy Overlord, now that one, it has got some starter points on there, so they do their own visualizations, but of course we've got Power BI and we can excel some of those visualizations. So if you do want some ideas on how to get started, visit the Fantasy Overlord website, have a look at their trends and their forecasts, and then use that as a starting point to then go and create some of your own analysis from there. So that would be some of mine. I mean, I'll be doing the same, so I'll be creating my own report as well, and I'll be entering the competition as well, and hopefully I'll win my own prizes. Lewis, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Sheb. One of the rules we have is you can't win anything, unfortunately. So you'll have to go to one of our viewers. But no, I've also put something in just to test out my analysis skills, and I am excited to see what people come up with.
Cool, excellent.
Brilliant. And so I'm probably the guy that does competitions for least, but I will also have a go. So like football, I never have the time to sit down and think about who's going to do what. Yeah. Carlos, you can enter a team from Venezuela if you like. Maybe you should just take all of the Venezuelan players. You're still muted, Carlos.
Yeah, well, good idea. Let me check the options.
All right. So thank you very much, people. We will see you in 2 weeks' time. So the next session, remember, is next episode 4, 21st of October. Counting chickens, data input, and something from me. It's been our absolute pleasure to have you join us today. Hopefully you find it useful. Please do subscribe to the blog, subscribe to Meetup. You can find all of the previous sessions either on the blog or on YouTube channels. So I have a YouTube channel, Ben Howard, not the singer, and Sheb has one, Power BI WizKids as well. And Lewis is far more sensible this time and spends time with his family instead. Thank you very much, everybody. Until next time, bye-bye.